it's fair to say that moviegoers are predisposed to dislike most movie villains. Because of course the entire point is that they serve as a towering obstacle to the hero and their mission. And while there are varying degrees of movie villainy, every so often a filmmaker manages to come up with an antagonist so diabolically evil that the audience instantly harbors a visceral, fast-boiling hatred of them. To be clear, this goes beyond mere dislike. We loathe these villains with every fiber of our being, as though they actually did something to us personally. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movie villains everyone hated. Number 10, Adrian Griffin, the Invisible Man. Lee Whannell's reimagining of the Invisible Man did a fantastic job of filtering classic Universal monster sensibilities through a contemporary topical lens. As deranged villain Adrian Griffin spends the movie stalking and abusing his ex-girlfriend Cecilia. What makes Adrian even more detestable than your average abusive a-hole is that after Cecilia leaves him, he fakes his own death and uses his optics technology to invisibly terrify her with total plausible deniability, given that he's apparently dead and all. Adrian makes Cecilia look increasingly insane to everyone around her, even killing her sister in front of her and framing her for it. Basically, it's the ultimate, most horrifyingly heightened form of gaslighting imaginable. And though Adrian is largely invisible, Whannell deserves enormous credit for casting an actor with such a wonderfully punchable face. Oliver Jackson Cohen's maddening performance evokes privileged smugness from every pore, such that audiences can't wait for him to finally get what's coming to him. Invisible a-hole more like. Number 9, Yeon-suk, Train to Busan. Train to Busan's bile-inducing human villain is basically way worse than the titular locomotive's fleet of zombie passengers. Yeon-suk is an infuriatingly self-serving COO who has little interest in helping others, and will do just about anything to save his own skin. More than this though, he's responsible, both directly and indirectly, for large swathes of the train's passengers being turned into zombies in the first place. This is either because he denies them safe passage for his own sake, or literally throws other people to the undead horde to facilitate his own safe escape. Charming. Yeon-suk is so selfish as to basically border on self-parody, but audiences don't even really get to savor his eventual zombification and demise, because he also ends up biting and infecting protagonist Seok-woo, leading to his own heartbreaking death at the film's end. There's looking out for yourself first, and then there's basically everything this raging idiot did. Number 8, Mick Taylor, Wolf Creek. Wolf Creek's antagonist, Mick Taylor, is a vile sadist whose MO involves preying upon helpless tourists, appearing to offer assistance before kidnapping, torturing, and eventually killing them. What a guy. Taylor clearly takes a sick satisfaction in his twisted vocation, made all the more stomach-churning by John Jarrett's utterly skin-crawling performance in the role. Using the veneer of a chirpy Aussie bloke to let his target's guard down, Mick is fully committed to prolonging the victim's suffering for his own enjoyment, before finally putting them out of their misery in brutal fashion. Who among us can ever forget the infamous head-on-a-stick scene from the first Wolf Creek, where Mick severs Liz's spinal cord and leaves her to die? Yeah, hard to shake that one off. And as if Mick's not a complete hate sink already, he's also insanely resilient for a flesh-and-blood serial killer, having survived some seriously gnarly encounters across both movies and the Wolf Creek TV series. Quick question for you right now for the comments. Who do you think is the most horrendous villain in movie history? Let me know down below. Number 7, Margaret White, Carrie. Easy though it is to despise Carrie's high school bullies for their continuous cruelty throughout the film, the real villain of the piece is Carrie's mother, Margaret. Mrs. White is an abusive religious fanatic who sees Carrie's emerging womanhood as a punishment for sin, and later refers to her burgeoning telekinetic abilities as witchcraft. She's basically everything that a mother or parent figure of any kind is not supposed to be. Margaret uses faith as a cudgel to both metaphorically and literally attack her own daughter. And to top it all off, she even tries to stab Carrie to death in the movie's incendiary finale. And so it's all too satisfying to see Carrie dispatch her vile mother by telekinetically impaling her with knives at the end of the picture, even if it's a fundamentally tragic scenario that also leads to Carrie's own demise. in horror cinema's grand pantheon of trash parents, Margaret White sits right at the very top, right? Number 6, Captain Henry Rhodes, Day of the Dead. More than any other horror villain on this list, Day of the Dead's Captain Rhodes is one who many fans of the movie love to hate. While this unhinged military leader is an unrepentant psychopath whose domineering behavior basically ends up getting a lot of people dead, Joseph Pilato's swinging for the fences performance is so damn entertaining, it's tough not to enjoy every second of his screen time. Rhodes rules with an iron fist, to put it mildly, and is exactly the sort of gross tyrant nobody wants to be stuck in a bunker with during an end-of-the-world situation. Would not be a fun time. And Julie, George A. Romero delivers a fitting end for Rhodes by having him get brutally torn apart by a fleet of the undead. However, Rhodes gets one hell of a final sign-off, telling the zombies with hilarious disdain as they chow down on his guts, "Choke on him!" That's one way to go. If you are having fun watching this video about villains everybody absolutely despised, then hit that subscribe button down below and you'll get even more What Culture horror videos. Number 5, Aidan and Mia Hall, The Lodge. The audience spends much of The Lodge believing that youngsters Aidan and Mia are in danger when a snowstorm traps them in a lodge with their father Richard's new partner Grace, who as a child was the sole survivor of a cult's mass suicide. A spate of increasingly bizarre phenomena in the lodge causes Grace to spiral mentally, before Aidan and Mia finally reveal that they've been gaslighting her the entire time. The strange visual and auditory hallucinations Grace has apparently been having were actually tricks played by the siblings after drugging her. All of this because their father's new relationship prompted their mother to kill herself at the start of the film. But the lodge could basically be called Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes, the movie, because the pair's disgusting attempts to brutalize Grace's psyche backfire spectacularly in the end. The gaslighting causes Grace to genuinely believe she's in the afterlife, resulting in her killing Richard when he returns to the lodge, with the final scene implying that she may or may not kill Aidan and Mia too. F around and find out, kids. Who could have possibly seen this scheme going horribly wrong? Only, I don't know, everyone, as Gary Oldman would say. Number 4, Guy Woodhouse, Rosemary's Baby. By the end of Rosemary's Baby, we all said it in unison. Screw that guy. Quite literally, in fact, given that the most detestable character by the end of the movie is Rosemary's husband, Guy. It's eventually revealed that Guy, a struggling actor, made a deal with a cult, conspiring with them to let Satan forcibly impregnate his wife and give birth to the Antichrist, in exchange for a successful acting career. Wow. While the audience is given plenty of reasons to give Guy the side-eye leading up to the full reveal, the knowledge that he sold his soul and facilitated his wife's impregnation with Satan's spawn for the sake of fame and fortune makes him instantly irredeemably awful. What a prick. When Rosemary spits in Guy's face after he suggests they can now conceive their own child, it's an applause-worthy moment, albeit providing only a brief sliver of respite in a fundamentally bleak ending. Number 3, Captain Vidal, Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro sure knows a thing or two about crafting a despicable villain, and his crowning achievement in that regard is surely Pan's Labyrinth's Captain Vidal. In del Toro's dark horror fantasy, Vidal is protagonist Ophelia's new stepfather, and an utterly savage civil guard officer operating in Francoist Spain. Vidal is an unrepentant fascist who takes clear joy in tracking down the Spanish guerrillas waging war against the Francoist regime, best evidenced by the unforgettable horrific scene where he caves a farmer's face in with a glass bottle. Yep, pretty grim. He's a particular breed of psychopath who will have a torture victim patched up only so he can torture them some more. Not to ignore how flagrantly abusive he is towards Ophelia herself. There's not even the faintest fleck of humanity to be found here, folks. Vidal is totally heinous, and yet Del Toro never turns him into a rampaging caricature, because of course people like this did and do actually exist list, unfortunately. Number 2. Carter Burke, Aliens. The Xenomorphs might be the most dangerous antagonists in the Alien franchise, but they're largely acting on instinct rather than out of malice, which is a motivation reserved instead for the series' human villains. Yay! And there's no one more detestable than Aliens' Carter Burke, the smarmy, sniveling snake of a Weyland-Yutani rep who is responsible for the Xenomorphs' epic body count throughout the movie. First off, Burke tricked the Hadley's Hope colonists into investigating the derelict spaceship that contained the alien eggs, resulting in all of their deaths save for Newt. And because that's not bad enough, he later sicks a pair of facehuggers on Newt and Ripley in a failed attempt to impregnate them with xenomorph embryos, allowing him to smuggle them through quarantine. Burke is utterly loathsome, enough that general audiences weren't the only ones who cheered his eventual demise at the hands of a hissing Xeno. Yeah, according to Paul Reiser, even his own parents were glad to see him killed when they attended the movie's premiere. Number 1. Frank, Barbarian. And finally, we have a character who could not be much easier to hate. The man responsible for basically every stomach-churning thing that happens in Barbarian. Frank. In the film's second half, we're introduced to Frank as the owner of the Detroit rental house within which the bulk of the story occurs. Frank is subsequently revealed to be a serial killer who abducts women, forcibly impregnates them, and then presumably kills them. Worse still, the monstrously deformed woman who prowls around Frank's house is said to be the result of Frank committing incest with the spawn of his victims. Yeah, it's nauseating stuff. And played with sinister relish by the brilliant Richard Brake, who has basically spent the last few decades being the genre's go-to casting pick for skin-crawling creepers. And that is intended as a pure compliment here, people. There's no moment to savor Frank's inevitable demise, though, as he simply shoots himself dead once he realizes his number is finally up. A too quick escape for someone who inflicted so much suffering on the world.